Good day everyone. We are the Group 4 assigned in Module 5 entitled Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Awareness. The reporters for Lesson 1 entitled Calamity and Disaster Preparedness are Esther, Beuthel, Eblacas, and Charlene, Lusterio. Next are Guillena and Jeany, Enterina for the Lesson 2 entitled Surviving a Disaster, Precautionary Measures Before, During, and After. The reporters for Lesson 3 entitled Earthquake Before, During, and After are Andreanne, Monique, Gorres, and Ezra, Mariñas. Then, on Lesson 4 entitled Fire Prevention Before, During, and After, we have Keana, Yesha, Galleto, Marisol, Datahan, and Arrianne, Dadang. We don't have a Lesson 5, so from Lesson 4, we skip right next to Lesson 6. After that, the reporters for Lesson 6 entitled Landslide Before, During, and After, we have Michelle May Dangazo and Ella Guillena. And last but not the least, the Lesson 7 entitled Drought Before, During, and After. The reporters are Andreanne, Monique, Gorres, and Charlene, Lusterio. So for Lesson 1, it is entitled Calamity and Disaster Preparedness. So we'll be discussing about the geographic profile of the Philippines first. So from the word geographic, this explains the geographic features of the Philippines. So first na discuss na to nga geographic profile is number 1 ang location. So ang Philippines is made up of an archipelago. So from the word archipelago, group of islands ang meaning ana. So kana nga mga islands is equal to 7,107 islands. Located ang Philippines sa Southeast Asia between South China Sea on the west and the Philippine Sea on the east. So number 2 is size. So ang Philippines is made up of 298,000 square kilometers of land and then 2,000 square kilometers of water. So if we add those two up, then we get a total of 300,000 square kilometers. So number 3 then is land boundaries. So ang Philippines kay walay land boundaries kay we are kanang surrounded with waters. So ang nakasurround sa ato is dani kay South China Sea, then dani then is ang Philippine Sea, then dani then dari then kaning ubos sa Palawan di makita. Pero sa ubos sa Palawan kay Sulu Sea, then dani then sa ubos sa Mindanao dari dapit kay Celebes Sea, then dani then is Pacific Ocean. Of course wala tay na palibutan nga land nga countries no na other countries. So ang neighboring countries na nato kay sa north kay ang Taiwan, then sa south kay Malaysia and Indonesia, then sa west then kay dari nga side west kay Vietnam, then ang northwest sa taas dapit dari kay China. So number 4 then is disputed territory. So from the word disputed, so mga misunderstanding, mga arguments in terms of territory. So ang two nga examples ani kay ang Spratly Islands and ang State of Sabah. So ang Spratly Islands ang ga-conflict ana ng mga countries kay of course apil ta Philippines, then ang China, Taiwan, Malaysia, and Vietnam. And then ang State of Sabah kay ang ga-conflict ana ng countries ang ga-claim ana nga sa Sabah kay ang Philippines kita, then ang Malaysia. Then number 5 is length of coastline. So from the word coastline, ang other niya nga synonym is shoreline. So meaning ana ang katason sa coastline. So ang coastline the meaning kay kuan the land and water lying adjacent to a shoreline. So meaning kanang gamit na mga nga land and water. So example na kay ang dagat, ang beach. So kana. So ang total na estimate sa coastline kay range from 17,500 kilometers to 32,289 kilometers. And then number 6, maritime claims. So the Philippines kay ga claim po tag mga territorial sea. So ang examples ani kay ang Sulu Sea katong dari dili siya makita pero nada ni ubos sa Palawan. So kana siya mo nang gina-claim sa Philippines Sea. Also ang Celebes Sea dari ubos sa sa Mindanao island. So number 7 is topography. So ang meaning sa topography kay any nga features na ang ginamin kay ang land profile. So land, terrain, so kana ang ginamin sa topography. So ang Philippines kay of course made up of volcanic islands, and then kanang volcanic islands surrounded by flat lowlands then. So alluvial plains kay mura siya slope siya nga surface ana, mura lugar siya gapatungas bitaw. So slope then if mag-flooding gali na din mga tubig, di ba, mga hulog ana. So of course ma-appeal po ang mga sediments ana. So mura din nagmukatag din ang mga sediments mo nang tawag nga alluvial plains. And then number 8, principal rivers. So from the word principal, muna sila mga important mga ilado, well-known main rivers. So ang isa na is ang Rio Grande de Cagayan located siya sa Cagayan Valley. So considered ni siya as the longest river and the largest river. So next pod is ang Pasig River. So kana pong Rio Grande de Cagayan kay 350 kilometers na siya in length. And then ang Pasig River is 25 kilometers in length. And then ang Pasig River kay gaserve siya as the main waterway. So muna siya ang ga-flow na siya from Laguna de Bay to Manila de Bay. So letter B na denta is Philippine Disaster Risk Profile. So ang Philippines kay considered jud as one of the most disaster-prone countries in the world. And then we are located at a very vulnerable location nata sa typhoon belt and Pacific Ring of Fire. So on typhoon belt, so of course expected na maka-experience ta og storms, typhoons, floods, etc. And then sa Pacific Ring of Fire, expected na maka-experience ta og earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and etc. Also pod droughts and other natural hazards. So over the last 3 decades, so 3 decades kay 30 years na siya in total. So ang na-record kay nga mga disaster events kay 268 tanan-tanan. So ang Philippines kay na-rank ta as 8 sa most exposed to multiple hazards according ni siya sa World Bank's Natural Hazard Disaster Hotspot list of countries. So then C na denta, historic overview of Philippine disasters. So number 1, earthquakes. So ang PVOLCS or the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology kay naka-record sila og 12 destructive volcanoes in the last 40 years. So in the span of 40 years naka-experience ang Philippines og 12 destructive earthquakes. So number 2, out of 220 volcanoes in the country archipelago 22 ani out of 220 ka volcanoes kay classified as active. So meaning expected sila nga mo erupt anytime. So ang other na din na volcanoes nga nabilin kay kwan na inactive or dormant. So number 3 kay tropical cyclones. So atong country is kwan na ang experience tag average of 20 typhoons accompanied na siya by strong winds, intense rainfall, and flooding, and mostly gakahitabo ni siya ang tropical cyclones from June to December. So number 4 kay flooding. So kaning typhoons, tropical depression, and continuing heavy rains are usually triggered by floods. So also pod ang mga man-made na mga man-made na mga ginabuhat sa tao like ang dam failures ug ang blockage of waterways. So muni po sila maka-trigger pod ni sila og flooding. Example ani katong sa Sendong, katong dam ni Alvarez daw kay kuan na cause maong nakataas sa isa sa reason nga nakataas sa Sendong. Then exposure and vulnerability. So in urban areas, those living in calamity-prone areas such as riverbanks and estuaries are vulnerable to natural and man-made disasters. So, kanig explain na ni siya dito sa USTP Gymnasium sa katong speaker. And then, the scale and significance of disasters is illustrated by the impacts on lives and livelihoods. So, number 1 ana nga reason is ang urbanization. Kung anong vulnerable lang na sa urban area. So, urbanization. From the word urbanization, so meaning dagan na kayo ang mga project, mga building projects, mga highways, mga anything nga infrastructures na ginabuild sa isa ka lugar. So, para sa sa picture, grabe na kay ka-urbanize ang place, no? Dagan na kay buildings, na mga highways, etc. So, muna, meaning nga compact na gaka-dense ang population. And then number 2 then na exposure and vulnerability sa urban areas kay ang environmental degradation. So from the word degradation, so meaning gaka-deplete ng atong natural resources, and then one causes of that kay gina-destroy nato tong environment. So with this affect ang iyang effects kay flash flooding, landslides, and drought. And then climate change kay meaning ani kay rise ng atong temperature. So kana siya init na kay ang kalibutan ana. So climate change munang tulo ka exposure and vulnerability in urban areas. So ang DRM or disaster risk management kay nag-enshrine sila Presidential Decree Numbers 1, year 1972 and 1566, year 1978. So muni siya, ga-mandate siya for overall policy and coordination of the DRM. And then, ang NDCC, which is interagency. So, ang interagency, so na siya, constituted between different agencies. So, pwede siya mabilong sa other agencies po. So, kaning NDCC, sila ang responsible for disaster preparedness, prevention, and mitigation. So, din siya is gina-chair din siya by the Secretary of National Defense with the heads of 18 departments as members. And then, we have disaster management. So, ang meaning sa disaster management is gina-include ang development of disaster recovery plans for minimizing the risk of disasters and for handling them when they do occur, and the implementation of such plans. So disaster management self-explanatory na kay siya, no? So from the word disaster management. So muni sila ang mga plans na gina-develop para ma-minimize ang risk disasters, and then saon pag-handle sa mga effects ani kung mahitabo sila. So muni siya, in other words, more siya plan. So kani siya, it usually refers sa mga management to natural catastrophes such as ang fire, flooding, or earthquakes. Then the Philippine Disaster Reduction and Management Act, or RA 10121. So RA 10121 provide siya comprehensive. So from the word comprehensive, broad approach siya to management. So comprehensive, all hazard, multi-sectoral, interagency, and community-based approach to disaster risk management. And then a natural disaster risk management plan, or NDRMP, kay kuan ni siya gi-implement o gi-enforce, or and then as a master plan para mag-provide og strategies, organizations, tasks of concerned agencies and local government units, and other guidelines in dealing with disasters or emergencies. So kaning NDRMP, sila ang gabuhat og mga mga plans or mga strategies para ma-deal ang any types of emergency. And then disaster risk reduction and management. So kani siya is a range of activities that contribute to increasing capacities and reducing immediate and long-term vulnerabilities to prevent damaging impact in a community. So kaning disaster DRRM, kay mo ni siya ang mga activities na ginabuhat para maka-contribute, para ma-accommodate ang, and then ma-reduce pod ang short-term and long-term nga mga vulnerabilities na kanang may tabo sa mga nga impact sa community. So role of youth in disaster preparedness. So number 1 is sharing the message. So ang youth kay makahelp siya ta as youth na makashare og message sa disaster preparedness through any like istorya nato sa atong mga peers or sa social media. And then number 2, acting as change makers. Of course, as youth, pwede po ta maka-act, no, as change makers. This includes na mag-help ta sa tong parents or sa communities para maka-prepare sa disaster. For example, kana mag-develop tag disaster plan and then disaster preparation na kit. And then number 3, bringing creativity. So ang youth pod kay kuan pod ta, no, in terms of kanang disaster preparedness, pwede po ta mahimong resourceful o creative sa ato ang pag-prepare sa mga anything nga may tabo. So, the next reporter will be Charlene Lusterio. So, Charlene Lusterio will be reporting about the first aid.
Thanks, Esther. So, my discussions for today is first aid. So, what is first aid? So, first aid is a skilled application of treatment using facilities or materials that available at the time that any trained individual gives an ill or injured person while waiting for medical assistance to arrive. So, it also defined as providing immediate medical care to a sick or injured individual in the Primary Health Care Household Teaching Manual 1987. So we should learn to know how to stay safe and sound pag-provide or receive first aid. By providing quick first aid, ma-decrease pa nato ang pag-suffer ni victim. And pag-abot sa nearest hospital, the doctor pod makes work easier sa iyaha when he or she takes over. So, is further discussed in the Primary Healthcare Household Teaching Manual 1987, the settings of priorities which are as follow. So, first things first, in an emergency situation where time is the most critical, you should set priorities according to its importance. Attend to the most seriously injured or ill victims first, as well as the most serious or life-threatening injuries. Then proceed to the lesser ones. So, next slide. Number one, do not move an injured person immediately from the position in which he was found unless absolutely necessary to avoid injury. So next, number two, checking breathing. If the person is not breathing, do A. Clear the nose, mouth, throat, and anything that can block the passage of air. So, remove na to no ang nakasagabal sa iyahang ilong bakaha or ba or throat no aron makaginawa si victim. So sa B, give artificial respiration at once. So muni siya no kaning sa third picture muni siya ang respirations at once. So next, uh, 3. Check if there is a pulse and if the heart is still beating. If still beating, if the heart was stopped, do the cardiac massage. And 4. Stop any bleeding. So if the victim is not bleeding, wrap the wounds with a fresh cloth until the bleeding stops and firmly with the palm of your hand. So next, if the person is unconscious but breathing normally, do the following. A. Turn him on his side with head lowered, but when he was a serious but not when he was serious neck or back injuries. So, no, ayaw mo turn him on the side. Pero ayaw mo siya if wala siya serious na neck or back injuries. So, B. Remove from the nose, mouth, throat, anything that can block the passage of the air. So, more siya katong sa number 2 no na dili i-clear or i-remove kung unsa na siyang nose baka mouth or throat. So sa C, do not give water or food ang victim. 6. Cover serious wounds or bones with a clean dressing gauze, cloth, or banana leaves. So, more Japon to no, i-cover ang wounds and burns, banana leaves baka or clean cloth. Number 7, splint, broken and or dislocated limbs. Number 8, if the life is threatening or serious conditions are present, seek medical help quickly or bring the patient immediately to the nearest hospital. Well, if unsafe na jud si patient or si victim, mangita na lang jud og medical help or kung wala, i-adto na lang jud siya sa pinakaduol na hospital. Then next, plan of action in emergency situation. Primary Healthcare Household Teaching Manual 1987. So, number 1, assess the situation immediately. Determine the presence of further danger in the environment. So, One who gives first aid always strives to preserve the victim's life, prevent complications, or keep the conditions from worsening, aid recovery. Next is assure the victim by comforting him and relieving pain. So, one who provides first aid kay dapat maka-understand jud exactly what to do in the various circumstances because the incorrect care could worsen the victim or victim's condition rather than help it. So next, qualities of a good first aider. Number one is gentle. No, dapat he shouldn't hurt the victims when handling him. Dapat gentle jud hinayon si victim. Number two, observant. He needs to be aware of any signs of victim's body. So, no, obserbahan mo ang mga signs sa victim's body. So, resourceful. He should be utilize resources efficiently. Next is sympathetic. He should be more comfort the victim. So, dapat kanang more comfort ka ni victim. Number five is tactful. You should not alarm the patient as it may cause a nervous breakdown. No, dapat think positive ra jud ta o dili dapat pahalata ni patient kung okay ra ba siya or dili na siya okay. So next is cheerful. No, if ikaw si aider, sure, dapat cheerful ka. Kung para if example is ikaw na first aider is ka-smile, murag, 'di ba, the victim may feel more at ease. Murag, dili ra kay siya makulpaan. So, the need for the first aid to prevent accidents. Next is to prevent added injury or danger. Next is to prevent suffering or death. Next is to train people to do the proper thing at the right time. Next is to provide proper treatment when emergency occurs. So, so this is the 9 general directions for the first aider. Number one, adjust the proper position of the victim. Number two, examine the victim, check for injuries. Number three, give immediately needed first aid. Number four, maintain the victim's body temperature. Number five, call a doctor. Number six, keep curious people away. And seven, make the victim happy and comfortable. Number eight, proper and comfortable transportation should be given to the victim together with tender, loving care. Number nine, don't give any liquid to unconscious victim. So, the three details to say when calling for a doctor. So, say your name clearly and tell directly your needed assistant. So iingon jud nimo no sa doctor clearly if unsa imong need na assistant and isay nimo imong names imuhang name sa iyaha para ma-identify ka niya if kinsa ka. Then next, exact place where the accident happened. Give the landmark so that the place can be located easily. So tell the doctor the exact location o maghatag ka og landmarks para dali ra ka malocate sa mag-rescue sa imo. So, number three, explain exactly what happened. Explain mo sa iya no, sa Jay, tinuod na nahitabo. Next. Kani, where does the Duty of the first aider start and end. The duty of the first aider starts the moment an accident happens and ends where the services of the doctor begins. But he should stand making his report to the physician about the accident that occurred, the nature of the injury, and the first aid treatment given to the victim. So, so mag-start daw si first aider the moment na ang accident accident na nahitabo, and then mag-end siya when ang doctor magsugod na sa iyahang service. So, pero dili ra diha ang nag-end kay pag human si first aider kay kailangan pa siya mo-report sa physician kung unsa ba iyahang gigamit sa tawag ana gi first aid treatment sa victim. So, manata sa first aid. Next na po ta is the calamity and disaster preparedness. So, a disaster is an event, natural or man-made, sudden or progressive, oftentimes with impact of such severity that affected communities has to respond by taking exceptional measures. So, it also described as circumstances brought by the climatic event or an armed conflict that causes significant stress, harm to people, physical harm, and economic disruption. So, if na-remember pa ninyo atong Sabado na seminar, nakaingon dito na due to its geographical location, the Philippines is frequently affected by the various natural disaster and calamities because of the more than 700 islands that make up on our nation. It is regarded as an archipelago. Then, categories of disaster. So, according to Frederick 1983, disaster can also be categorized into two, and these are natural disaster and man-made disaster. So, natural disaster. Kanisha is especially make reference to mm, disaster brought by natural phenomena. Technically, technically speaking, these phenomena such as earthquake, cyclones, floods, and etc. are known as natural hazard. So, man-made disaster refers to a disaster caused by man-made hazard. So, ang man-made disaster daw kay na-divide siya into three categories, which is armed conflict and civil strifes, B. Technological disaster, C. Disaster in human settlements. So that are caused natural hazard that occurs in human settlements. So una tani uh, armed conflict and civil strifes. So disaster management is concerned with a variety of issues related to armed conflicts and civil strifes, such as protection and assistance provided to displaced people and refugees throughout the conflict, as well as the physical and economic reconstruction, as well as social rehabilitation following the conflict. So, ang example ana is katong Mindanao, Abu Sayyaf, and sa to, Moro National liberation activities in Mindanao. Muna siya ang mga example. So, B. Technological disaster. Disaster like this is typically come from accident or incident that happen during the production, delivery, or handling of hazardous commodities like fuel, chemical, explosive, or radioactive materials. Example for this is the catastrophic gas leak at the pesticide plant in India in 1984. So, another example for that is the oil spill in Guimaras, the flash floods in summer, the collision of two passengers ship in Leyte that result in 100 lives, and many other technological disasters that have occurred here in the Philippines. Next is disaster in human settlements. So, uh, Kansha is a natural hazard such as earthquake, landslide, windstorm, and floods are considered disasters according to the level disruption they can cause to the human populations, to the build of environment or natural ecosystem. These are the common types of disaster: an earthquake, volcanic eruption, tsunami, tropical cyclone, flood, landslide, bushfire, drought, epidemic, major accident, and armed conflict and civil unrest. And these are the general effects of disaster: loss of life, injury, damage to destruction of property, and etc. And etc. So, with this type of calamities presented, calamity and disaster preparedness are necessary so that people will know how to react or manage their family accordingly during these trying times. So the last slide is, what is a disaster preparedness? So these are measures which enable government agencies, organizations, communities, and individuals to respond quickly and effectively to any disaster situations. So, being prepared help lessen the stress, anxiety, and worry that come with disaster. Families, individuals, and community must be aware of what to do in event of a disaster. So, mm, so that's all for my report. Thank you.
So, next is suggestions to enhance community preparedness. So, number one is, of course, dapat i-appreciate na to nga ang kamatuoran na ang ang any disasters kay mo may tabo jud na siya with or without warning. And then um, number two is awareness on the characteristic and corresponding effects of calamities. So dapat makabalot ta sa mga characteristics sa isa ka calamity ug unsang ilahang effects na ma-brought ani sa ato. And then number three is i-identify nato ang mga areas nga disaster prone sa atong locality. And example lugar ana is kung duol ka sa dagat, dili prone jud ni siya more on prone jud ni siya sa tsunami. So ana. And then number four is readiness in responding to the threats of natural and man-made hazards. So kana kung if ready ta nga makarespond to any natural and man-made hazards, kani sila ang maka-enhance sila sa atong community preparedness. And then number 5 is capabilities. So meaning kanang unsa pag para mahimo kang capable dapat pud na kay kahibalo sa isa ka butang. So in this case dapat kabalota nga unsa tong buhaton, angay buhaton o kansa nato ni buhaton in case na ang disaster may tabo. And then number 6 is application of countermeasures. So countermeasures, so meaning kana unsa na to pag-compensate o unsa na to pag pa-ease ang impact sa calamity. So kana. Then possible general disaster countermeasures. So number 1 is development of possible warning indicators. So mostly kani sila warning indicators, ma-signages ni sila na makita nato no pa sa tong palibot, like example lugar kanang caution, wet sa gali na wet floor ana kanang makita nato sa mga kwan kung naa lugar kwan para dili maligyas ana. So more sila signages na sila. Development of possible warning indicators. So number 2 is land use regulations. So ang example ani is zoning. So kaning zoning is urban management planning to protect the city's safety. So example ani is ang flood. Unsaon pag zoning sa atong urban management na planning. And then number 3 is building regulations. So ang ginabuhat aning mga building regulations kay para ma-protect ang atong safety, health, and welfare around buildings. And then relocation of communities. So of course kung naay disaster, of course pwede nato ipan-relocate ang mga naigo. And then number 5, public awareness and education programs. So kani example ani atong mga naa sa USTP gymnasium nato, example ana apil na to siya sa examples mga education programs of public awareness kanang i-educate ta about sa disasters. And then number 6 is evacuation plans and arrangements. So of course dapat na pud tay plano unsaon pag-evacuate ug unsaon nato pag-arrange sa tong evacuation plans. And then number 7 is fire prevention regulations. So kani sila mga kailangan buhatonon in case kung na fire. So muna mga regulations like for example para ma-prevent ang fire, dili nimo biyan ang mga wirings na nakapansak or kanang ang kitchen sa kitchen lugar dili nato na dapat kailangan jud nato limpyuhan ang atong stove para dili ma-accumulate ang oil kay ang oil is also known na maka-cause og fire. So muna. And then number 8, of course makig-cooperate pud ta sa mga international na cooperation in information campaigns. So kana like mga WHO, mga international naman sila ng mga kuan in terms sa disaster para sa ng COVID ana. But kana siya kay more on natural or man-made na ana. So kani din next is the components of disaster management. So number 1 is prevention. So meaning sa prevention is kung saan pag-stop nga dili jud mahitabo ang disaster. And then number 2, mitigation. So meaning ani is how to make a disaster nga dili kayo severe or serious ang effect. Then number 3, preparedness. So unsaon pag how to be ready when something happens. So number 4, disaster impacts. So kani siya impact sa disasters like total effect of a disaster such as economic loss, physical loss, social loss, cultural, environmental kana sila or mga injuries, death, and mga manang disaster impact. And then number 5 is response. So meaning ani nga actions nga kailangan buhaton after a destructive event occurs. Then number 6 kay recovery, meaning is unsaon pag-restore sa mga disaster impacts. Such as katong giingon ka ganyan, unsaon pag-restore sa disaster impacts kani number 4, like katong economic, physical, social, cultural, ug environmental. And then number 7 is um kanang development. So meaning ani is in case na mahitabo totro ang disaster, dapat na mag-develop na kag objectives on how to reduce the effects of any hazards and disasters and mag-prepare na for any emergencies. Then, objectives of disaster management. So, muna ang mga aims or goals sa disaster management. So, number 1 is, of course, i-avoid o i-reduce ang physical and economic losses. And then number 2, i-reduce ang human personal sufferings and personal losses. And then number 3, to achieve rapid and durable recovery. So, self-explanatory na kayo siya. So, kana lang siya. Munang aims or goals sa disaster management. And then, objectives of disaster management. Balik siya. Okay, next na punta. So, common problems in disaster management. So, number 1 is di gina-appreciate ang effort sa mga local na officials to educate us for disaster preparedness programs. So, kana lack of appreciation for the disaster preparedness program by local officials themselves. Then, number 2, dili effective ug strong ang governance sa LGU sa pag-coordinate. So, muna, number 2, lack of a strong and effective disaster coordinating council installed in the LGU. And then number 3, non-existent ang disaster preparedness planning. So, number 3 is like kanang wala jud, like wala kay plano jud sa in case nga na prepared ay kanang wala kay plano para mahimong prepared in case na naay disaster. And then number 4, lack of effective linkages for disaster operations. So kani in case nga naay disaster, wala kayo effective nga operation kay dili united. And then number 5, absence of a functional disaster operation center. So kani non-existent Japon ang services for disaster operation center. And then number 6 kay erroneous disaster reporting and monitoring. So from the word erroneous, so mali o wrong ang mga reports na gina-disseminate sa public. And then what can influence disaster warning? So the source and timing of the warnings. So like kung asa gikan ang warning, like message ana, kung asa gikan, like sa verified ba nga mga news outlet or mga pages, kung nasa social media. And then kung sa tao gikan, like kanang peer to peer ana, then of course source Japon siya. Then kung timing, kung kanus ka giingnan ana or kanus ka na informed about ana nga warning, so maka-influence na siya sa disaster warning. And then number 2 is the warning message, kung unsa ang gi-disseminate nga information, katong information, so message. So maka-influence Japon na siya sa disaster warning. And then number 3 is the warning transmission, kung asa siya gi-send through, like through kwan ba, face to face or mga online ana. And then number 4 then kay the recipient's response, kung giunsa og response sa kanang nakadawat sa message, sa warning message. So muna sila ang upat ka factors na maka-influence sa disaster warning. So number 1, self-reliance through what are the disaster management policies? So number 1 is self-reliance through self-help and mutual assistance. So kani siya, meaning ani is you cannot help yourself if you do not help yourself. But if kung di na jud makaya, of course, pwede pud ka makapangay for mutual assistance. And then number 2, maximum utilization of resources in the affected areas. So kani siya, meaning ani is unsaon pag-transform sa resources into consumable goods and services para sa mga gapanginahanglan. And then number 3, planning an operation to be done on the barangay level in an interagency, multi-sectoral basis to optimize existing resources. So meaning ani is unsaon pagplan and operate sa sa barangay para makamake sa mga resources sa ilang best use sa mga nabilin. And then number 4, documentation of plans of doc members. So kanang mga doc members dapat kailangan sila nga mag-write sa ilang mga plans unsaon nila pag-carry out sa ilang mga plano sa disaster management. And then number 5, local leadership to take charge at their respective levels. So number 5 kay kung asa naka-assign ng mga level ang mga local leaders, dapat po na mag-take charge sila. Dapat sila nga responsible na mo act sa ilang mga kanang asa sila assigned. And then number 6, national government to support local government efforts. So kani siya number 6 kay dapat ang national government kay i-support ang efforts sa local government, like any assistance para makatabang sa local government. And then number 7 is dapat ay exercise. Number 7, exercise and periodic drills to be conducted principally at the barangay level to ensure readiness of all concerned. So kani siya ang ginamina ani is dapat nga mag-perform og drills and exercise in each barangays every now and then para na ma-ready ang mga katawhan. And then different tasks of the National Disaster Coordinating Council. So, ang task sa NDCC kay silang advice sa president kung saan ang status sa disaster preparedness programs o operations o rehabilitation efforts. And then number 2 is sila ang ga-establish og mga policy guidelines about sa emergency preparedness and disaster operations. Munang trabaho Japon sa NDCC. And then number 3, kay silang ga-establish sa mga funds, services, disaster equipments, and relief supplies. And then number 4, silang ga-advise sa mga lower level pa nila na mga disaster coordination councils, like, and then kanang through the Office of the Civil Defense in accordance with the guidelines. So dapat in accordance with the guidelines on disaster management Japan ang ilang gina-advise. And then number 5 is silang ga-recommend sa president kung kailangan na ba mag-declare sa state of calamity sa areas nga grabe na ang pagka-damage sa ilahang areas. And then number 6 kay ang NDCC sila pod ang create sa action group composed siya of kanang permanent na jud na representatives from the members of and other government agencies. And then ang executive officer should always be ang head. And then number 7 is utilizes the facilities and serves the Office of Civil Defense in Camp Aguinaldo. So sila po nag-utilize sa mga facilities in discharging its functions. And then members of the council. So ang Department of Public Work and Highways or DPWH, sila ang responsible for planning, designing, construction, maintenance of infrastructure. And then ang Department of Transportation and Communication or DOTC, sila ang responsible sa strategic transportation to ensure timely and organized transportation of relief goods, rebuilding materials, equipments, and etc. Then number three, Department of Social Welfare and Development or DSWD. Sila ang nag-ensure sa availability of kanang sa safety o kanang sa security og accessible nga evacuation centers. Then number four, ang Department of Agriculture or DA. So kaning DA silang kuan ga provide for food, shelter, um, mass feeding sites, distribute food packages, etc. And then number five is ang Department of Education, Culture, and Sports or DECS. O, pero karon gitawag na siya as Department of Education. So kani siya nga member of the council kay responsible siya for educational services as well as learning and teaching activity prior an emergency. So kato ang trabaho sa DepEd. Then number six, Department of Foreign Affairs or DFA. So sila ang um, responsible na mag-advise and assist sa President in planning, organizing, directing, coordinating, integrating, and evaluating the national effort. And then number seven, Department of Labor and Employment or DOLE. So kani sila mo'y mag-give og immediate relief to all the displaced workers from the calamity. So sila mag-give income sa mga displaced workers. And then number eight, DTI or Department Trade of Industry, sila ang mag-give technical assistance in strengthening resilience and economic development through income and job generation. So, munang trabaho sa DTI. And then, so, and then the different coordination councils have personnel stationed in their respective operation centers. So, kani silang from 1 to 8 na sila respective nga operation centers. So, namely, kani silang 1 to 5 damage assessment and needs analysis unit. So, na yung mga tao nga kanang assigned sila na nga trabaho. And then, number 2, then Emergency Management Information Service Unit. So, na po yung assigned anak ng mga tao. And then, 3, Vulnerability Risk Reduction Management Unit. And then, number 4, Plans and Operations Unit. And then, number 5, Resource Unit. So kani sila each council kaning katong na from DPWH to DTI kato sila nga councils sila ang ga-provide sa operating units for number 1 kato kung gipang explain ka ganiha nga silang magkuan sa communication, transportation service, an early warning device, health services, auxiliary fire and police services, relief and rehabilitation services, public information services, and rescue, evacuation, and engineering services. So mo to, gipang-explain na nako, di ba to isa-isa. So, more siya anak gi-generalize na tanan. And then, what does the National Disaster Management Program contain? So, kani siya ang gina-contain sa NDMPC kay ang disaster preparedness. So, construction of disaster reduction facilities. So, kaning mga facilities mga na-construct nila and then unsaon pag-response sa disaster sa short-term rehabilitation, and then public information pod, and then research and development. So, suggestions to enhance community preparedness. So number 1 is appreciation of the fact that murag gikuan na ni kaganiya appreciation of the fact that any disaster can occur with or without warning. So murag explain naman ni ganiya. Murag na-explain na siya kaganiya. So appreciation of the fact that any disaster so kani dapat um i-accept na nato nga nadjay disaster may tabo with or without warning, awareness on the characteristics and corresponding effects of the calamities. Then identification of vulnerable and disaster prone areas in the locality, readiness in responding to the threats of natural and man-made hazards, capability to do what must be done and when to do it in case disaster strikes, and application of countermeasures to cushion the impact of of ni to cushion the impact of calamity. Mag-explain na ako ni kaganiya. So that's it. Thank thank you everyone. So the next reporter will be Ella, Guillena, and Jeany Enterina for the lesson 2.
Hello everyone, I am Ella Di Guillena with Jeany and Enterina, and today we will be discussing the lesson 2, surviving a disaster, or precautionary measures before, during, and after a disaster. So before we proceed, we will note the objectives of this lesson, which is first, define terms related to disasters. Second, identify the precautionary measures before, during, and after floods. In this lesson, we will be discussing about how to survive a disaster, knowing that our country is one of the most disaster-prone countries in the world. This lesson will teach or give us some tips on what to do before, during, and after a disaster, specifically in floods. But before we discuss the precautionary measures, let us now first know the definition of terms. The following definition of terms, both operationally and conceptually, may help us understand better topics covered in this chapter or lessons. We have here the definition of terms. First is conflagration. It is an extensive fire which destroys a great deal of land or property. It is sonog in our terms that can cause extremely destroy everything. It is a wildfire, and example of this is that happened on 2021 in California that have a massive conflagration and that burned more than 463,000 hectares in Northern California. Second is disasters. A disaster is a serious disruption of the community's function. It is an unexpected nga panghitabo that might lead to destroy the environment. And one of the example is flood. We didn't know when will flood occur. So moving on to the third is disaster control. It is designed to prepare the inhabitant and to protect the lives of every people, including their properties. This should be action before, during, and after a disaster. Fourth is disaster management, a process of effectively preparing for and responding to disasters. Just like disaster control, it is designed to maintain control over disaster and to provide helping at-risk persons or communities. Fifth is disaster risk reduction. It is the process of protecting the livelihoods and assets of communities and individuals from the impact of disasters. So the next topic, the following are the common types of disaster that occurs around the earth. First is we have earthquakes. Earthquakes is the sudden and violent shaking of the ground, sometimes causing great destructions, as a result of movements within the Earth's crust or volcanic action, or it is simply alinog in our language. Second is flood. Flood is it is a water that occurs and rises resulting after having a heavy rain, or it is baha, just like in the picture shown in the screen. Next is pollution. It is an environmental elements or cause air harmful to human beings, animals, and in all living things around the earth. Our country mostly experience this situation. It might be air pollution, water, or even land pollution that are also made by humans. Just for example in the pictures below. Next is radioactive fallout. It is a particles that fall to Earth as a result of a nuclear explosion. It can cause leukemia to humans. Next is storm surge. Storm surge it is a rise of water level along the shore as generated by the storm with winds. Just like in the picture shown, just next is tropical cyclone. Tropical cyclones are the most destructive weather phenomena. It is a circular storm that forms over warm oceans. When a tropical cyclone hits land, it brings heavy rains and strong winds. The winds can destroy buildings and rip out trees from the roots. It is also known as typhoons. Next is tsunami. It is a series of extremely long waves caused by a large and sudden displacement of the ocean. Usually, the result of an earthquake below or near the ocean floor. Just like the example in the picture shown. And lastly is volcanic eruption. Ang pagbuto sa volcano pertaining lava, ashes, rock fragments, and other gases that will surely destroy our environment. And aftershocks can lead to an earthquakes. Now, the protective measures will be discussed by Jeany and Enterina.
To surviving a disaster, precautionary measures before and during and after a disaster. So flood, a condition of occurs when a water overflows the natural or artificial confines of a stream or body of water. So, ang example anin niya is katong sa nahitabo sa Bugo, then atong okay sa Bagyo. Itong gibagyo ang lately, di ba? Nyani po to same sa pictures nga ang kuan na kay ang tubig, ang ubang mga balay gianod na sa baha. So mao na siya isa ka kuan sa flood. And then ang cause pod ana niya maong natay flood. So ang cause ana niya kay kuan kana of kanang kusog na kaayo ang kanabitang ulan, dayon mga typhoon. Tas kuan po dyan kining magsigig putol sa kahoy. Kaya wala naman dyan bitaw makasagang sa tubig. Wala na yung makapugong bitaw. Mao nang kusog kaayo ang daloy sa tubig, mao nang dali ra kaayo tang bahaon. Tungod ana. Measures for a flood. Before a flood, there are suggestions to prepare a flood. Building structures in a floodplain should be avoided unless there will be provisions for reinforcement and elevation. 2. In order to stop flood water from entering a building, constructions, and barriers. 3. To prevent flood water from backing up in the drain, your home, shake valves which should be installed in sewer traps. 4. To avoid seepage, build cell walls in basement with waterproofing compound. 5. Elevate the furnace, water heater, and electric panel if susceptible to flooding. So kini siya kay mao ni siya ang imong buhaton before mag-flooding na. So for example maghimo kag kanang pangharang sa imong portahan or bintana para dili makasulod ang tubig. Mao na siya ang isa sa mga imong buhaton lang in case o na mag-flood na bitaw dayon. Then kaning sa kuan kanang di ba sa balay naman na siya kanang agianan sa tubig kana sila long para bitaw kanang magkusog ng kanang kusog na kay ang tubig aron dili bitaw siya aron dili siya kanang mapundo ang tubig is imo to siya kanang chikon basin og naay naharang maong may nag-cause nga mas dali mo daghan ang mas dali sa ang tubig tungod kay naay naharang so imo to siyang chikon kay basin og naay naharang ingon ana something is during a flood. So if your area is flooded, the following are advices. So 1. Equip yourself with information by listening to a radio or watching a television. 2. Awareness in the occurrence of the flash flooding is important. Immediate move to a higher grounds and do not wait anymore for instructions if there are possibility of a flash flood. 3. Awareness of stream, drainage channels, canyons, and other areas known to a flood should be taken into condition. So, kuha naman jud no dapat responsible jud sa atong kaugalingon. So, kung wala tay kanang example lang, naaman jud na may TV patrol or sa pa na mga kondra nga magbalita sa ato kung naabay kanang maabot nga bagyo sa atong area, mas dapat gyud ang kuan ang kanang mga flooded area o dapat gyud sila kanang always ready gyud sila if nanay mingon nga nanay bagyo kay kanang ilang lugar is kuan baya so dapat natay radio makahibalo ta sa radio sa TV tas kanang sa kuan pod dapat pod kanang dili na ta paabot nga ingnon nga kanang adlakaw na mo kay nanay bagyo mo kuan so dapat kita na mismo sa atong kagalingon ready ta gabaha nagsugod so dapat madto din ta nang kanang bitong higher ground kanang habog siya nga kuan nga posible nga dili maabtan sa baha in case lang lang ba kay haron kanang aron safe bitaw so dapat ready kita di na ta paabot nga kanang minon pa nga kanang magpaabot pa ta sa announce ngayon ana nanay baha dapat adto na mo didto so dapat kita mismo sa atong kaugalingon ready ta sa mga posibleng mahitabo. So sa atong before na kanang napatay time do the following if you prepare to evacuate. So kung mo evacuate ta natay mga kuan Number 1 is secure your home. Bring in the outdoor furnitures if you still have time. Essential items should be moved to up per floor. So, kung napatay oras, ato siyang atong mga gamit, ato siyang ipagawas. Kung napatay oras sa pag-evacuate. Second is dapat kuanta sa atong before ta mag-evacuate dapat ang atong mga electrical electrical appliances is disconnected na siya so dapat like ref dapat ibot siya daan kay kung nakasulod na ang tubig tas gasaksak pa ang ref tas mag-ground siya posible nga makurintihan ka so dapat imo jud siyang ibton ang mga appliances mo nga naka-connect pa siya sa kuan kay haron dili ka makurintihan. So next is driving flood facts. So when driving a flooded area, the following are important points to remember. So 1, if a water is already 6 inches, it will already reach the bottom of your car, which can cause loss of control and possible stealing. So dapat kung habog na gani ang kanang tubig bitaw then naka sa truck so dapat dili na lang kamo padayon imo na siyang naugan kay kung imo mo gud siyang ipadayon posible nga crash ka or maunsa baka tungod kay mawala naman ang control sa truck god kay tungod habog na pud kaayo ang tubig so wala kay kuan kung gusto ka nga safe so manawag na lang ka then kuan imo na lang siyang biyaan sa angkar imo siyang i-abandon kay haron para sa imong safety raman pod. Next is after a flood. So there are the following guidelines should be considered. So number 1, listen the news report for you to able to know if the water supply in the community is safe to drink. 2, water may be contaminated by oil, gasoline, or raw sewage that can cause disease. Hence, flood water should be avoided. 3, moving water should be avoided. 4, stay away from downed power lines and report to the power company. 5, if the building is surrounded by flood water, move and stay out immediately. 6, be aware of areas where flood waters have receded. 7, return home only when authorized declared hazard. 8, immediately repair damaged septic tank. 9, when entering a building, use extreme caution since there may be a hidden damage, particularly in foundations. 10, everything that got wet should be cleaned and disinfected. So mao ni siya imong buhaton after sa baha or flood ba, then like dili jud ka pataka sama sa tubig. Dili nimo siya kanang dili din ka minom sa tubig nga pag human sa baha minom din ka. Dili siya kay basin og nabitaw na sama sa kuan sa dapit sa mo ang area nga after siya magbaha dapat dili din minom sa tubig kay naman na siya mga bitaw.
Good day everyone, I'm Andreanne Gorres and today we will discuss the precautionary measures before, during, and after an earthquake. But to further understand the said topic, we must first define and understand the definition of terms. So the first one is the aftershock. It is an earthquake of similar or lesser intensity that follows the main earthquake. So from the word after, kakahitabo ang aftershock pagkahuman sa main earthquake. So nganong kakahitabo man ang aftershock? So sometimes tungod sa kakusog sa main earthquake, napay possibility nga ang rock sa ubos kay mga lihok pa, and then it can be pwede siya kusog, pwede siya hinay ang impact sa atua. So, we must always be vigilant since dili ginamin nga humana ang earthquake mula na. So, kanang napagid usahay nga mosunod, so dapat observant kita permi. And then the number 2 is earthquake. A sudden slipping or movement of a portion of the earth's crust accompanied and followed by series of vibrations. So, ang earthquake daw is a sudden movement in the earth's crust. Ang earthquake kay gakahitabo na siya since ang mga rock sa ubos sa atong earth kay di ba init man kayo na ang atong center sa earth. There's a possibility nga mamolten ang mga rocks, and then mga hulog siya so mawalag foundation ang nasa ilalom, and then mas slip siya, and then muna siya ang cause nga nung nag-earthquake. So, the number 3, it is the epicenter. It is the point in the Earth's surface directly above the focus. So, ang epicenter daw muna siya ang origin sa earthquake. Muna siya ang kung asa first nahitabo ang earthquake. Like, magina siya ang tunga-tunga gyud sa earthquake and kanang origin kung ano nahitabo ang earthquake. So, number 4 is the intensity. It is used to measure the amount of damages and the person's experience during an earthquake. So, ang intensity daw, kay muna siya ang kanang mga nakuan nga damage. It can be measured through Roman numerals, like katong Roman numerals. And then, it measures the damages and the impact sa kanang ang impact sa tao, unsa ang impact sa earthquake sa mga tao. Like for example, kusog kay nga intensity 7, like nangaguba ang mga buildings, nangakuan mo na siyang indicator nga nung intensity 7 siya, since daghan kay mga building nga damage, and then ang mga daghan mga trees nga tumba. Number 5 is the magnitude. It is an amount of energy released by an earthquake, and it is measured through the amplitude of the seismic waves. So, ang magnitude daw kay it is written in a numerical value like 5.2, 7.1 na siya magnitude, and kanang ma-measure na siya ang magnitude through seismograph. And then for those nga naglibog unsa ang kalayan sa intensity and magnitude, ang intensity kay muna siya ang nag-measure sa mga damages nga na-cause sa earthquake, and ang magnitude kay muna siya kung unsa ka kusog ang earthquake, like 5.2 parang inana. And then the seismic waves, it is a vibration that travel outward from the earthquake fault at speeds several times per second. So, ang seismic waves muna siya ang kanang ginagamit sa mga professionals para ma-determine nila kung unsa kusog ang magnitude. And ang seismic waves kay ga-travel na siya, and then ga-travel na siya like several times per second, and kanang gaka-measure ni siya through seismograph. So, ang seismograph is an instrument that is used to measure the amount of seismic waves that travel through the Earth's surface. This instrument determines the location of the origin of the earthquake and its strength. So, like I said kaganina, ang seismograph muna yung ginagamit sa mga professionals para ma-determine kung unsa kusog ang magnitude sa isa ka earthquake. And kanisad, ang seismograph is ma-determine niya kung asa ang origin sa earthquake, and kung asa ang first gyud ang first nga nahitabo ang paglihok sa yuta. So, measuring the earthquake strength. So particularly, we use the intensity and magnitude in determining the strength of an earthquake. The following are the things that we need to know and feel in determining the intensity of an earthquake. So intensity 1, scarcely perceptible. Even though this intensity is not that strong, it is still noticeable in the naked eye, since hanged objects such as lamps slightly move in this intensity. So, ang scarcely perceptible is dili kay nato siya ma-feel. Pwede na ta maglingkod-lingkod dara, or kanang usa pa tong buhaton, dili ginato siya ma-feel. However, makita na nato siya nga naa, since galihok naman ang mga gamit nga nakahang, such as kanang lamp nato, and then mga flower pots. So, intensity 2, slightly felt. In this intensity, few individuals may notice the sudden movements, and also hanged objects slightly swings in this intensity. Kani nga intensity compared sa intensity 1, ma-feel na ni siya sa mga individuals lang gid nga kanang observant gid kay sa surroundings, and ma-feel nila kanang nag-earthquake, since kusog-kusog na ni siya gamay compared ato sa intensity 1 nga pwede ra mo maghigda-higda dara. So kani siya nga intensity kanang ma-feel na ni siya, and then ang mga hanged objects kay kanang gakuan-kuan na gamay, like kanang galihok-lihok na sad siya, like kanang galihok-lihok siya. And then ang tubig sad, if observant ka sa water, like sa water drum, inana kanang mulihok na sad ang water, pero like hinay lang gyapon siya. However, ma-feel na siya sa mga individuals even though hinay siya nga intensity. So, intensity 3, weak. Many people will notice the shaking in the ground, especially the people that staying in the upper floor building, and hanged objects are moderately moving. So, Kani siya nga intensity kay ma-feel na ni siya sa mga tao nga nasa second floor. And then pero ang uban kay kanang uban kay ginabaliwala ra ni nila intensity 3 kay dili pa man gyud siya ingon nga kusog, however maka-feel na ang mga tao kanang, and dili pa gyud kay siya ingon gyud nga like makaadto na ka sa gawas, since kanang dili pa man gyud kay siya ingon nga kusog, however to kuan like for safety lang, gawas lang gyud if maka-feel ka nga intensity 3 siya. And then ang mga hanged objects are also moderately moving, such as mga lamps, mga kuan sa inyong cabinet, malihok na siya, and pero dili gid kay siya ingon nga kusog, pero nara gyud siya sa tunga-tunga ang kakusog sa kuan intensity 3 kung if kuanon ang mga lamps, pero kanang mas kusog-kusog na ni siya sa intensity 2 and sa intensity 1. So, intensity 4, moderately strong. Individuals that are sleeping are lightly awakened, and rumble sound sometimes be heard in this intensity. Objects that are hanged, such as picture frames, lamps, doors, and etc., are considerably moving. So, in this intensity, malihok na gyud ang mga doors, mga inyong gate nga wala nakasiradog ayo, malihok na gyud ni siya sa intensity 4. And then ang mga tao nga natulog lang kay maka-feel lasad sila nga naglinog na, since kusog-kusog na gyud ang intensity 4. And then I believe sa intensity 4 kanang mabantayan na sad nato ang mga trees nga maglihok, nga mag-swing lang gamay, pero dili pa gyud kay siya ingon nga kusog gyud. However, kanang for safety lang, gawas na lang gyud. And then para dili for safety, just go outside and then observe lang gyud dayon. So, intensity 5, strong. Individuals that are indoors can absolutely feel the strong movement in the ground, and they are advised to run outdoors. Objects that are hanged, swing violently, and sound of various objects can be heard, such as the clattering of utensils. So, in this intensity, ang mga tao kay, especially sa mga uban nga kanang dili na kay magpanic, maka-feel na gid sila kung unsa gid kakusog ang intensity 5, and nagid sa initiative na nga mogawas na sila, and then magkuan na sila sa kanang like open space kanang for safety lang. And then ang mga objects sad nga mga na kanang like kanang chandelier ninyo if naaman, malihok na gyud siya, and then there's a possibility nga mahulog siya since kusog naman gyud ni ang intensity 5. So, intensity 6, very strong. People may lose their balance, and they may be frightened in this situation. They are advised to go to an open space so that they can avoid falling objects. Furnitures and heavy objects may be shifted, and houses that are poorly built might be slightly damaged from a crack. So, ang intensity 6 is kusog na gyud siya. And then ang mga tao nga nagdagan-dagan kay, or ang mga tao nga nagpanic kay basin kuan nga matumba sila. So kanang in this situation, we must always kanang be calm, since kanang kita pa'y ma-injured sa atuang pagpanic. And then ang mga furnitures ani, if makita ninyo kanang if naka-experience sa intensity 6, naikuan nga mulihok na siya, and then ma-disarrange ang uban ninyong mga gamit like kanang sa cabinet, and then naiuban sad nga makita ninyo sa mga walls kay nanay mga crack. So let's proceed to intensity 7, destructive. In this intensity, individuals may experience difficulty standing in upper floors. Objects and furniture which are heavy can be overturned or topple. Various structures may considerably damage, and cracks on the wall is already noticeable from the naked eye. Furthermore, there is a possibility that landslides may occur due to liquefaction, and trees be strong can be strongly shaken strongly shaken. So, in this intensity, kanang kuan gyud ang individuals gyud is highly advised na gyud nga moadto sa gawas, and then since kusog na gyud kay ni siya, and then ang mga tao nga nasa upper floors kay kanang kailangan gyud sila mo evacuate sa ubos kanang for them to be safe. And then ang mga furnitures like pareha sa intensity 6 malihok yapon siya, and then ma-disarrange, and ang mga crack sa wall kay like mudako siya, or kanang bitong kanang moabri siya og ayo, since kanang ang intensity 7 gyud kay kusog gyud kay ni siya. And then compared sa intensity 6, since crack raman siya, like linya lang siya, pero sa intensity 7 kay naging possibility nga ma-open na gyud ang crack, and then mas worse ang mga uban nga mga building like kanang poorly built kay mga guba. And then in this intensity, landslides may occur tungod siyang kakusog. Ang mga yuta nga kanang nahumok tungod sa ulan, tungod sa liquid kay like nangahulog bitaw, like landslides na kana ang mga balay nga nasa bukid day possibility nga mga guba due to landslides. So we must always for safety good, so we must always evacuate para dili ta makuanan sa earthquake. So intensity 8, very destructive. People may find it difficult to stand even outdoors. Various structures and buildings that are poorly built are considerably damaged. Utility posts, towers, and monuments may tilt or topple. High possibility of landslide and rock falls in mountainous and hilly areas. So, kani siya nga intensity para gyapon sa intensity 7. Para siya sa intensity 7, however, mas kusog ni siya para sa like effects sa intensity 7, since ang intensity 7 sad kay na siya landslide sad. So kani sa intensity 8, na siya landslide, and na say possibility nga mga hulog na ang dagko nga mga rocks sa mga mountainous area. And then napoy instances nga kanang mga tumba ang mga buildings, ang mga kahoy tungod sa kakusog ani nga intensity. And then ang mga tao nga nasa outdoors or kanang nagdagandagan kay nagikuan nga mga tumba na sila tungod sa kakusog sa intensity 8. So intensity 9, devastating. People are forcibly thrown to the ground. Buildings are totally damaged and many objects are destroyed. There are widespread landslides and liquefaction with lateral spreading and sand boils. So, sa intensity 9, para yapon sila effects sa intensity 8, however, mas kuan ni siya, mas dako ni siya impact since kusog na gid kayo ang intensity 9. And then naiuban sa mga cities, if kuan man ka ha, may tabo ni si Bakulang, nagi ka ng possibility nga mga guba gyud ang mga buildings sa city nga kanang wala kay natarong ang foundation. And then there are also a widespread of landslide and liquefaction. Dili lang kay landslide sad nalansay kuan nga ang mga rocks kay mga hulog sa building, and mga hulog sa mga mountainous area. So intensity 10, completely devastating. all man-made structures are practically destroyed. There is a large scale of landslide and liquefaction in various areas. So, ang intensity 10 daw kay kanang like wipe out tanan, like ang mga building sa city like mawala na gyud na siya tungod sa kusog sa intensity 10 compared sa intensity 9. Napay guro mabilin nga mga buildings pero gamay na lang, pero sa intensity 10 makuan ni siya ma-wipe out gyud tanan mga building na nakuan sa na built sa city. So there is also a large scale of landslide and liquefaction. So ang nay possibility nga ang mga mountainous area kay ma-deform, like kanang tungod kay napoy kuan nga mapikas tungod sa kakusog and tungod sad sa yuta nga grabe lang kahumok. So naay kuan nga matunga na siyang kana siya nga mountainous area. And then sa mountainous area sad mga tumba ang mga kahoy, mga hulog ang mga rocks gyapon. So that's it for the intensity so that's it for measuring the intensities. So let's proceed to protective measures. So before an earthquake, we must prepare to prevent it nga dako ang impact sa tua. So to prevent it, first, secure that there are no defective wirings and leaky gas lines and inflexible utility corrections in your house. So ang pasabot ani niya kay kanang dapat i-secure nimo nga walay mga wirings nga if ever mahitabo man kaha ang earthquake, walay mga wirings nga naabri, walay mga walay gases, walay leaky gas, like kanang mga nabusot nga gas sa inyo area, since nay possibility nga makakos ni siyag sunog. And inflexible utility collections in your house, like kana bitang like kanang mga cracks inana, since ang earthquake kay maka-cause gyud na siya usahay og cracks. So we must always so dapat nato na siya i-check gyud, since nay usahay nga tungod ana nga crack kay naguba inyong balay. So number 2, picture frames, shelves, and other hanged objects must be fastened tightly to the walls. So ang meaning ani kay mga shelves daw, kailangan nato mga shelves, mga cabinets nga nakabutang sa like sa kuan nato, like above sa atong ulo, kay dapat daw nato siya i-secure, since if kusog yun ang earthquake may possibility nga mga hulog to siya and kanang mga mahulugan sadta. So mas better na lang nga i-fasten nato siya daan para ma-safety sadta, and then wala ra sad kayo'y ma-damage nga gamit sa atong balay. So number 3, overhead lighting fixtures should be anchored properly. So para nagyapon sa number 2, kailangan gyapon nato i-fasten og ayo ang mga suga sa atong balay, since napoy kuan nga mahulog na siya, na instances nga mahulog na siya and mahulugan sadta. So mas better nga ma-fasten na siya properly. So number 4, if possible, store your canned goods, glass, and other breakable materials in lower shelves. So if possible man nga kanang pwede ninyo mabutang ang inyong mga canned goods, kanang mga mabuak nga mga butang sa lower nga butanganan, like sa ubos lang, kanang above the knee lang inana nga kaubos, mas better na siya para ma-avoid nga mahulugan ta, and then kanang ma-avoid sad nga mas mudaghan og damage, kanang ma-damage ang atuang balay. So water heater, refrigerator, furnace, and gas appliances should be secured and bottled down to the wall studs. So, ang water heater, refrigerator, furnace, and gas appliances daw kay pareha po siya sa number 2, like kanang i-check lang nato if nakakuan ba siya og ayo sa wall, like kanang nakapikit bitaw sa para dili siya dali mahulog, kanang dili bitaw siya dali matumba since nagiusahay nga ang earthquake gyud tungod sa kusog kay matumba ang inyong refrigerator, ang inyong mga kanang like inyong mga cabinets, kanang sa mga utensils, kanang sa water heater, nagi chance gyud nga matumba gyud na siya. So mas better gyud nga i-fasten na siya ayo and i-check sad nato if naka-arrange ba siya ayo sa ato ang house. So number 6, always secure that your house is properly anchored to its foundation. So like kaganina, ang tungod sa kakusog sa earthquake like intensity 7 makaguba na gyud siya balay. So para ang atong house is secured lang and dili siya maguba, so we must secure it and i-check yun na to permanently if nanabay crack sa atong mga walls and or nanabay abri, and if naaman nang dapat tapalan siya or kanang ibaga pa ang foundation nag-ayo para dili gyud siya dali maguba. So, number 7, determine the location of the safe spots in your house and inform your family members immediately in order for you and your family to hide when an earthquake occur. So, ang pasabot to ani kay anang dapat namoy kanang mapa lang, bisag gamay lang gid nga mapa sa inyong kanang map lang gid sa inyong house or kanang like blueprint lang sa inyong balay para ma-determine ninyo kung asa mo pwede makatago, kung asa mo pwede makakuan kanang maka-take og shelter if na may earthquake, since kanang ang earthquake gyud kay dili gyud nato siya matag-an, so mas better na lang natay safe spots na pwede nato mataguan in case nga mag-earthquake man. So, and if ever man nga nakabalo na ka sa mga safe spots, inform your family or your family members immediately. So number 8, earthquake drills should be conducted with your family members. Drop, cover, and hold. So kaning drop, cover, and hold mo siyang basics para ma-safe ta sa earthquake. Drop, we must kanang mo tan-aw ta sa ubos, like sa kuan sa yuta bitaw, and then cover, like coveran nato ang atong dari, and then para kabira nato atong dari, like for example na mahulog dili ra kay siya ingon nga impactful gyud sa ato and then hold, kanang adto ta sa mga butang, like for example desk ka pwede nato mataguan para if kanang na may mahulog sa kuan dili ta mahulugan, and then we must also hold sa sa table para dili ra kay ta malihok bitaw para maka-kuan ta tag balance. And then ang drop, cover, and hold is matudlo sa ni siya sa mga schools since ang kuan na karon kay ga-offer na sila og kanang mga safety measures sad para unsaon pag-evacuate sa like kani nga panghitabo like earthquake. So that's all for the precautionary measures before
During an earthquake, if you're indoors, then you need to open a cabinet. Just beware of falling objects that might fall, like plato, baso, vase na nasa cabinets. Then take cover under a sturdy table, desk, or bench. Then if wala, just cover your face and head using your arm and crouch in an inside corner of a building, kaya it is safer than kanang magstay ra ka in an open space sa building. Then you can also use the doorway, but make sure na it is strongly supported and load-bearing doorway, kay there are times na basta-basta lang og himo ang doorway, then dili siya nga naka-sturdy, then it might cause more injuries to you nga magstay ka ana nga place. Then stay away from falling objects that might hurt you, like glass, windows. So it is safer jud na mag-find ka og kanang inside corner of a building na walay glass or anything mabuak para dili ka malagsikan or maigo. When going outside, you need to put shoes or boots or like kanang baga ang iyang soles para if ever na ay broken things like glass kay dili ka masamad, kay sometimes dili na to makita tungod sa kaabog, so it is safer to use boots gyud. Avoid electric wires or anything electric or any electric wirings. Then if makakita kag authority, you need to report it immediately because short circuits might cause fire. Then it will kanang mas lisod mag-retrieve og bodies if there are fire pagid. Then since sometimes wala na siya signal, listen using battery operated radio or television to still be updated on what's happening even if wala signal. If you wake up during an earthquake, just stay still on your bed and cover your head with pillow or anything na baga basta makover imong head. But if your bed is not in an open space, then something heavy might fall on you. Just transfer to the nearest safe place like your study table. Don't go in damaged areas unless authorities requested your service. Don't go in na kanang example mobalik ka sa inyong balay. Don't do that because you don't know the damage that the earthquake caused in your house. Then you might be injured. Then stay still till the shaking stops because sometimes people panic and run away, then they're not aware of the surroundings na dili na day siya safe. So night times na gakatagakan sila og mga butang. Don't use elevators kay kanang it might stop during the earthquake, then basin matrap ka, then sometimes wala pa yung signal, so authorities don't know that you're in an elevator, so it might take a while, and if claustrophobic ka basin masuffocate ka. If you're outdoors, immediately get away from anything like seek for an open space kay it is safer kay walay matagak sa imo. Then remain outside kay it is safer good. Kay if you're in a moving vehicle, stop the vehicle but stay inside kay at least if naay matagak sa imo, naa pa kay kanang roof sa imong vehicle. Then if mag-proceed na ka sa road, watch for broken roads and bridges, especially bridges kay it might collapse. Then if you're trapped, avoid lighting a match because there are times na there are gas leaks and it might cause fire or suffocation. If you're under a debris, cover your mouth with cloth and handkerchief to avoid suffocation and create loud noises using whistle. If you don't have whistle, use pipes or wall. Then if wala gyud, shout pero use it. Do it wisely kay it might suffocate you and tire you. Mao pay cause nga mawad-an ka ginhawa. After an earthquake, there are still aftershocks, so dili gid kumpiyansa kay miski aftershocks kay maka-cause jud man siya collapse. Stay away from damaged things that might collapse like buildings or inyong balay. Ahi ra ka mabalik sa inyong balay if totally wala na gyud or like secured na siya sa authorities. Avoid places near the sea, or if you live near the sea, beware of tsunamis. Then inspect yourself for possible injury para ma-apply diretso ang first aid to prevent tetanus. Listen to battery operated radio or television to be updated for emergency information. Then just use telephone in case of emergency. If daily emergency like social medias lang, don't use it. Then you should follow the community emergency plan para ordered ang pag-evacuate and pag-save sa inyo. Then sometimes we leave our house, then since walay signal, we can't communicate with our loved ones, then they might search for us. So if mag-evacuate ka, leave a note para they won't get para dili sila makulbaan if hasa ka. Then emergency materials should be bought kay there are times na miskin ako sa evacuation area, reliefs are not kanang delivered, so if naka-emergency materials, at least naka food to consume in a few days, even if wala pa itabang na ma-deliver.
Good day, everyone. I am Arrianne A. Dadang, BSIT-1R3, and I am going to discuss the introduction of the lesson for fire prevention. So, in this slide, we're going to talk about what is fire. So, fire is a rapid oxidation of matter accompanied by heat or flame. Many people are injured and die because of fires. It is important to understand the basic characteristics of fire for self-protection. Poisonous gases produced by fire make a victim disoriented and drowsy. Heat and smoke are more dangerous than the flames itself. And lastly, the leading cause of deaths due to fire is through asphyxiation, exceeding burns by ratio of 3-1. So as I add something, fire is one of the examples of man-made hazards. It is dangerous and very deadly. There are people who died and got injured because of fire. But as it mentioned in the slide, as it mentioned in the slide, heat and smoke are more dangerous than the flames itself, and it is true because the smoke that the fire releases are poisonous and toxic gases. So once the victim inhaled that smoke, they became disoriented and drowsy, and that causes the victim to pass out. So it is really important to get to know what is fire and to know how to prevent it, to get away from danger. So in this slide, we're going to discuss the nature of fire. So heat, fuel, and oxygen are also known the fire triangle. And once the three elements combine together, they produces fire. So first, heat is actually the responsible of the ignition of fire, while fuel is an essential substance that is capable of burning, and then the oxygen, which comes from the surrounding air. So the fire is a result of applying heat to the fuel source, and then the fuel source combining with the oxygen in the air, resulting in burning. And that's it. So in this slide, we will going to talk about the general classifications of fuel. So number 1, class A, these are ordinary combustible materials, which is mostly solid. So the examples of class A are plastics, woods, and papers. And as you noticed, the examples are light materials that are easily be burned. And number 2, class B, these are the kinds of fuel which are in liquid or gas state. And some examples are other petroleum gas, oil, and LPG. And third, class C, these are electrically energized fuel, and the examples are electric fans, irons, and etc. And as you noticed, the two of them are empowered by electricity. So, and then lastly, class D, metallic fire. And some examples of the metallic fire are magnesium, potassium, and other combustible metals. So this time we're going to talk about the general classifications of energy or heat. So first, chemical energy, which results from a chemical reaction, and this reaction is actually called exothermic. And other definition of chemical energy, it is energy stored bonds to the atoms and molecules. And some examples of chemical energy are batteries, natural gas, petroleum, biomass, and coal. And number 2, electrical energy comes from the electricity. Some examples are the defibrillator, wind turbines, and batteries. So, mechanical energy, heat resulting from friction and compression. And then 4, solar energy. This is actually, we all know about solar energy, the energy that comes from the heat of the sun. And the nuclear energy resulting from breaking or combining atoms. So these are the stages of fire. First, the incipient stage. So this is the beginning of the stage. And as you can see, there's no reactions happening yet, no visible smoke or flame. And then the second stage, which is the smoldering stage, the smoke is already visible, and it is the start of the ignition of the fire. And then the third stage, which is the flame stage, actual fire occurs and can still be controlled by a fire extinguisher. And then lastly, the heat stage. It is the uncontrolled one, and it is a fully developed stage of fire, and it is the most hottest and dangerous stages of fire. So this slide, I'm going to show to you the most common sources of fire. Number 1 is arson. So arson means damage or destruction of a property by means of explosion or fire. Number 2, lightning, which is kilat. Number 3, kitchen grease. For example, like cooking oils, butter, fats. And these examples can actually easily attracted by fire and can spread wider. And then number 4, flammable chemicals. From the word flammable, it can easily burn. So some examples are petroleum, alcohols, and other different kinds of gas. And number 5, electrical short circuits. Number 6, debris burning in forest and neglected camp. And lastly, overheated electrical appliance. So in this slide, I am going to talk about how to eliminate industrial fires. So number 1, rigidly enforced smoking restrictions. So it means nga ayaw gid kalimti nga magbutang tag mga restrictions og signs nga dapit ang bawal, kay it is actually one of the ways nga para makaprevent ta og accident. And unsa na lang kaha kung walay mga signs or restrictions, like for example nahita nga ga-smoke and then wala siya kabalo nga bawal man day mag-smoke, and then maka-create pa siya og accident, and basin na possibility nga makadamay siya og tao. And luoy siya kay siya ang pasumanginlan nga wala ra gid siya kabalo nga bawal man day mag-smoke. So I think dapat naagi na siya permanente. Okay? So number 2, oxygen should not be stored in the same areas flammable gases or near any readily combustible materials. Dapat flammable gases, dapat na gina siya own storage room. It's because flammable gases can easily be attracted to, can easily be burned. And don't forget nga, ang oxygen is one of the 3 elements na makaproduce og fire. So nalang kang mahitabo kung ang kaning duha mag-uban sa isa ka room. So dapat separated gini sila duha. And then the next slide, how to eliminate kitchen fires. So, number 1, the stove should not be left when cooking. Dapat kung magluto ka, bantayan yun na siya nimo. Kay wala na takabalungan, nagprito ta ang mga mantika kay naglagsik-lagsik na. Kasi mo pag itong rason nga masunog, diba? And then number 2, heat producing appliances should be kept clean. Old food particles and greasy build-up can ignite. Dapat pagkahuman gamit, limpyuhon yun na. And then, dapat pagkahuman gamit, limpyuhon yun na siya. Immediately nga, limpyuhon yun. And then, ipanglabay na ng mga food particles kay wala naman po na sila gamit. So number 3, after cooking, always turn off the stove. And number 4, don't let the stove get red hot. So, pagkahuman, luto, pagngon ang stove, and tangtangon ang iyang plug, kay basin, mo pa na ang rason nga, kanang muinit sa kayo, kay nalimtan pag turn off, and then maka-cause pa na nga, basin magbuto. So, dapat i-off good siya. And then number 5, never let your pressure cooker boil dry. Because ang iyang pressure mag-built in, and then naay possibility nga ang hot foods, ang lids, ang plugs can be thrown all over the kitchen. So dapat kung pwede magbutang lang og enough amount of liquid sa pressure cooker. So, number 6, don't let a pot holder get near a hot burner since it is a fire hazard. So, a pot holder is actually made up of cloth, and it is one of the light materials that can attract, fire. So, ayaw din na siya ipaduol kaya there's a possibility na masunog siya. And number 7, octopus connections should be avoided. This kind of connections na mag-plug ka o one socket lang, i-avoid din siya kaya makakos din siya o fire. So number 8, appliance precautions should be read and followed. Dapat basahon o i-follow pag maayong mga instructions para makaprevent o mga accidents. And number 9, appliances should be given plenty of airspace to prevent overheating. And then lastly, number 10, electrical cords should not be trailed across the floor or under rugs. Dapat ibutang ito sa tama nga butanganan kay it can also cause tripping hazard and expose fires and can also damage sockets. And then next, how to eliminate forest fires. So number 1, campfires should be extinguished before leaving. So if you have plans with your friends to go camping, make sure na kung mahuman mo, maglimpyo unta mo, walang tayo mga basura nga idili ninyo. And especially if you're doing campfire, make sure to put the fire down properly. Kanang mula nagisiga nga makita ka para walay forest fire na nakitabo. And then number 2, smoking in the forest should be avoided as it might set fire on dry leaves and twigs. So if you want to smoke and then if you want to smoke, make sure na ilabay po siya sa right na basurahan. Ilabay po siya sa basurahan. Dili kay ilabay lang mo bisang asa. Ilabay mo bisang asa na naapay sunog. Kakos ginaog grabe nga accident. So ilabay. So dapat pag nasa ang imong smoke, and then ilabay din siya sa tamang lalagyan. So in this slide, we're going to talk about the classes of fire and how they are extinguished. So number 1, class A, The materials are wood, cloth, paper, trash, plastic, and upholstery. So as we extinguish it, we're going to use water pump or tank extinguisher, pressurized water extinguisher, AFF or aqueous film forming foam, and also dry chemical fire extinguisher. And number 2, class B, flammable liquids and gases, for example like gasoline, oil, grease, paints, kerosene, solvents, and etc. So in this classes, we're going to use powder foam, vaporizing liquid, or carbon dioxide extinguishers. And caution is that do not use water is because makasamot rin siya o makakause of fire. And then number 3, class C, energized electrical equipment, fuse boxes, firings, and appliances. So we're going to use carbon dioxide. So we're going to extinguish this kind of materials by using carbon dioxide fire extinguisher and dry chemical fire extinguisher. And also in class C, mag-avoid gapon ta og using water kay mag-send na siya og shock and electrocution. And then number 4, class D, combustible metals, which are the magnesium, potassium, sodium, and etc. We're actually going to use a dry powder extinguisher. So in this slide, we're going to talk about the different types of portable fire extinguishers. So the first one is the water pump or tank extinguisher. Is worked by removing fire. So this kind of extinguisher is very common in siya sa ato perminti na to ni siya ag kakita mostly sa buildings, schools, and etc. And mostly kani siya nga extinguisher mo ni atong perminti aga gamiton. So the next one is the pressurized water extinguisher. So this type of extinguisher is used with ordinary tap water, then pressurized with normal air. Just like the water pump or tank extinguisher, they are used on solids such as papers, woods, clothes, plastics, and other class A fire risk. And the third one is the aqueous film forming foam or AFF. So aqueous film forming foam is used for putting out flammable liquid fires, like for example fuel fires. Makita kani siya nga extinguisher, mostly makita ni siya sa mga shipboard or some shore facility, and also ginagamit ni siya sa class A and class B fire risk. And next is the carbon dioxide fire extinguisher. So this extinguisher is filled with non-flammable carbon dioxide under extreme pressure. It is used to take away the oxygen element of the fire triangle, and it also cools down the fuel. And it's used for the class B and class C fire risk. And the next one is the dry chemical fire extinguisher. So kani siya nga type nga extinguisher, gina-cover niya ang fuel gamit ang dust to separate, to separate the fuel and the oxygen. And yeah, and I think ba man siya gina-separate is because fuel and oxygen are one of the elements that produces fire. So I think that is the reason, and also to prevent chemical reaction. So this extinguisher is good for Class A, Class B, Class C fire risk. So, and last, the dry powder extinguisher. So kani nga extinguisher, gahimo pod siya og barrier. So barrier pod iyaha. And so barrier pod iyaha para ma-separate ang oxygen source and fire. Pero dili kayo ingon siya nga mo put out good og fire. And so makaingon ta nga there's still a possibility nga mubalik ra ang fire silbi mag-reignite lang ang fire. So, and the next slide. So yeah. So in this slide, as I understand it, I think mao ni siya ang ginabasihan kung unsa gid nga fire extinguisher ang ginagamit for different classes of fire. So first is the severity of the fire. Second is the hazards. 3 is atmospheric condition. 4 is personnel available, and ease in handling. So the next slide, I am going to show to you the procedures in operating fire extinguisher. So step 1, pull the pin and make sure that the seal is broken. So ang pin, so as I show you this picture, the pin is actually the round one, the red round one, and then sa iyang ubos is a straight, ang iyang ubos is also, I think that is also part of the pin, and that connects to the extinguisher, and kailangan nimo na siya i-pull to break the seal. And then the second one is aim the nozzle, and after removing it from the clip. So the nozzle is actually kanang murag hose sa fire extinguisher. Dapat itapat nimo na siya kung gyud nag-occur ang fire. And then the third one is squeeze the trigger. You have to squeeze the trigger or the lever para mugawas ang naa sa sulod sa extinguisher. And then lastly, sway the nozzle towards the base of the fire. And make sure sa imong pag-sway, tanan nga na-occupy sa fire is so tanan nga na-occupy sa fire, make sure nga kuan na siya mapalong yun. Okay, so I think this is
Good
the
day, everyone.
end of
Let's now proceed to tips on what to do in case of fire. So, before a fire, number 1, smoke alarms should be installed. Number 2, place smoke alarms on every level of your residence. If outside sa bedrooms, 4 to 12 inches lang siya from the ceiling or high on the wall. If open ang inyong stairways, dapat na siya sa taas. And if enclosed ang stairs, dapat na siya sa ubos. So, for reference, mo ni ang open stairways, and then sa pikas ang enclosed stairs. So, near but not in the kitchen. Manong dili dapat siya mismo sa kitchen. Kaya diba sa kitchen dara tagaluto, so na ay smoke, na ay fire. So, pwede nga mag-trigger og false alarm ang inyong smoke alarm. So, number 3. Number 3. Smoke alarm should be tested and cleaned once a month. Replace batteries at least once a year. Smoke alarm should be replaced once every 10 years. So, kung old na kaayo ang imuhang smoke alarm, pwede nga dili na siya mogana, dili na siya mo-operate, so useless gihapon siya. So dapat yun na i-replace nato ang smoke alarms. Number 4, candles and lamps should not be set too close to curtains. Since, di ba, dali na kaayo maka-caught of fire ang curtains, dali na po siya mukalat. And then, during a fire. Number 1, leave immediately the building. Number 2, if your clothes catch on fire, stop, drop, and roll until the fire ceased. Dili dapat ang mudagan kay mas dali mukalat ang kalayo if mudagan ta. Number 3, when going through an area which has a thick smoke, wet a towel and cover your nose and then crawl on the floor going to your exit. Anong mo-crawl on the floor man? Since, di ba, ang heat mo rise siya, so mas init ang sa ceiling dapit kaysa sa floor. So, mo-crawl ta sa floor para cooler and then dili kaayo ta mainitan. Number 4, if the door feels hot, do not open. Escape through a window. So, kung ang door gali kay hot na siya, pwede nga kani ang room next ana is kana na spread na ang fire and then puno na siya og smoke, so dili dapat yun na siya i-open. If you cannot escape, alert firefighters by hanging a white or light colored sheet outside the window. Number 5, if the door is cool, open slowly and ensure fire and or smoke is not blocking your escape route. Shut the door if your escape route is blocked using an alternate way such as the window. So number 6, as you escape, immediately close the doors to delay the spread of fire. So stay out once you are safely out. Do not return to the building or your home. Ayaw jud pagbalik-balik. Kaya di ba unlike sa mga movies, di ba kanang heroic kaayo tan-awon na kaning naay mo balik nga nakay balikan sa imong loved one lugar tas ma-rescue din nimo nga dili rare jud kay na siya sa in real life gyud kanang mahitabo nga ma-save nimo ang kaning pagbalik bitaw nimo. So dapat i-entrust gyud naton siya na task sa kaning mga people from fire department since naa sila equipments, naa sila mask, so makaya ra nila rescue. Escaping a fire. So number 1, review and practice escaping from each room with your family. Number 2, be sure that windows are not nailed or painted shut para dali ra siya maabrihan. Number 3, if your residence has several floors or levels, you have to consider escape ladders. So, maning kanang escape ladder nga nasa image, gabi ra kay siya ka-efficient and then light ra kayo so dali ra kay ka maka-escape through it. Number 4, family members should be made to understand that they have to stay low to the floor when escaping from a fire. So as what I've said before, di ba? Ang heat rise, so mas init sa ceiling kaysa sa floor. So ato lang siguro ang i-spread ang knowledge ana about sa kaning nganong magstay on the floor man ta. Number 5, clean the storage areas and throw all the trash such as old newspapers and magazines. Flammable items. Number 1, avoid flammable liquids indoors. Gasoline, benzene, etc. Number 2, flammable liquids should be stored in their proper containers. Number 3, avoid smoking near flammable liquids. Very self-explanatory lang siya, no? Number 4, after using materials soaked in flammable liquids, burn them separately para dili kayo kusog, so dili kayo less risky siya for a fire. Number 5, chimneys should be insulated and place spark arresters on top, at least 3 feet higher than the roof, and then remove hanging branches above and around the chimney. So, heating sources. Number 1, be careful when using alternative heating sources. Number 2, the legality of using kerosene heaters in your community should be checked with your local fire department. Kerosene heaters should be placed outside. So, dili dapat yun siya ibutang sa sulod or gamitin sa sulod ang kerosene heaters, no? Kay ang kerosene heaters magod ga-consume siya og oxygen. So, if naa siya sa indoors, pwede nga ma-reduce ang amount sa oxygen sa indoors and then mag-cause siya og incomplete combustion or something like that. Number 3, heaters should be placed at least 3 feet away from the flammable materials. Number 4, Follow manufacturer's instructions in using type of fuel designated for your unit. So, dapat seek professional help dito, no? Dito magbasta-basta. Number 5. Ashes should be stored in a metal container outside and away from your residence. Number 6. Flames should be kept open away from walls, furnitures, drapery, and flammable items. Number 7. Place a screen in front of the fireplace kay para kanang dili kayo di ba spark spark ana sa fireplace, so less para ma-reduce ang burns, tapos kaning mabadulong pa siya sa carpet or sa curtains mo na magbuta og screen. Number 8. Heating units should be inspected and cleaned annually by a certified specialist. And then matches and smoking. Number 1. Keep matches and lighters away from children. So, any dangerous materials dapat i-keep away man gid sa children, no? Kay gabi kay na sila ka curious, so bisag unsa na lang ilang hilabton. Number 2. Avoid smoking in bed or when drowsy or medicated. Dili gid mag-smoke kung katulgon ka or kaning drunk pa ka or kaning naakay kaning drugs bitaw sa imong kuan system. Smokers should use deep and sturdy ashtrays, cigarettes, and cigar butts should be doused or soaked in water before disposal. Number 3. Do not throw cigar and cigarette butts into waste basket since dali ra masunog. Electrical wiring. Number 1. Be sure the electrical wiring in your homes are installed properly and regularly checked by a competent electrician. Number 2. Extension cords should be inspected for frayed or exposed wires or loose plugs. Number 3. Outlets should have cover plates and be sure there is no exposed wiring. Number 4. See to it that wiring does not run under rugs, over nails, or across high traffic areas. So naagyo dapat ay place for our wires, no, para dili siya ma-damage. So walay ka ng short circuit, walay ka ng exposed wiring, walay mo buto. Number 5. Do not leave your electric iron with the current on. Kay pwede nga kaning mag-overheat or katong short circuit na pod sa kaning wiring. Number 6. During brownout or blackout, cut off all electrical connections. Or to be safe, pull down the main switch. Number 7. Extension cords or outlets should not be overloaded. Kaning mag-charge ka nga, dagan kaayo kaning puno na gani kayo ang isa ka outlet, mag-extension pagid ka sa pikas, then naapay kaning like mag-TV pa ka, then naapay kay rice cooker, dapat dili siya puno. Number 8. Be sure that insulation does not touch bare electrical wiring. Other important information. Number 1. Your doors should be closed when sleeping. Kay if open ang door, mas dali gyud ang pag-spread ana sa fire o sa smoke. Number 2. ABC type fire extinguishers should be installed in your homes and family members should be taught how to use them. Number 3. Consider installing an automatic fire sprinkler in your home alongside with smoke alarm na ni siya para dali ra ma-put out ang fire o dali ra siya ma-detect. Number 4. Request from your local fire department to inspect your home for fire safety and prevention.
So, next is after fire. Search and rescue operations. Scene management or scene size up. This conduct an initial evaluation of the scene to become effective, immediately determine the scene safety, identify possible hazards, and determine the nature of the problem and the number of patients or casualty. So kani siya, mao ni siya ang ensure nga naabagyoy safe na lugar sa naitawan sa sunog para dito sila mag-provide og help sa mga nasunugan. Next is first aid in search and rescue. So the rescue workers are the first persons in contact with both surface and trapped casualties, and it is very essential for them to know the importance of first aid. So there are 3 things to be done by the first aider. First is immediately diagnose what is wrong with the patient or victim. Next is
immediate and appropriate treatment should be given. Third, stay with the casualty until they are transferred to a more advanced medical aid. So there are causes of burns. First is hot liquids. Second, flames. Third, hot objects. Example is metals and plastics. Fourth, concentrated acids and alkali. Fifth, radiation flashes. Sixth, high voltage electricity. Next is treatment. So once it is safe, they they should remove the patient from source of burns and they should do the following. First is to extinguish and remove smoldering clothes. Second, keep away the patient from electrical source. Third, immediately wash off the chemicals with large amount on. And fourth, remove objects that may cause additional burns. Next is check ABC. So first is oxygen should be provided to all burn patients. Second, transport to the hospital if the patient is in respiratory distress. Third, direct pressure bandage should be applied to control hemorrhage. And fourth, shock and hypotension should be treated. So ang hypotension is mo na siya kanang na low blood pressure na ang tao. So kailangan gyud na siya i-treat gyapon. Next is initial patient assessment. So the first aider has the added responsibility to determine in order to perform rapid assessment of the scene. So kailangan sila mag-tan-aw kung naabay danger na environment. So next is number of patients to be treated. Third, mechanism of injury. Fourth, additional sources required. And fifth, problems of immediate extrication or patient access. So, what the first aider must do? So, they must be calm and immediately take charge. Second, they must ensure safety of the casualty. Third, guard against further injury. So, bantayan nila ang mga tao na affected sa sunog. And fourth, give the casualties confidence by giving them assurance, talking, and listening to them. So, there are essential things to remember. First is, position the patient correctly by maintaining open airway. Second, artificial ventilation should be applied if casualty is not breathing. Third, immediately control bleeding. Fourth, dress wounds. Fifth, fractures and dislocation must be mobilized. Sixth, the casualty must be placed in correct position and most comfortable position consistent with the requirements of the treatment. 7. The casualty should be relieved of anxiety and confidence should be promoted. 8. The casualty should be relieved of pain and discomfort. So, 9. Gently handle the casualty. And 10. Protect the casualty from cold and heat. So next is, this is how to cover burn with dry dressings or sheets. So first thing to do is, moist dressings should be applied. Second, if the patient is to be brought to the hospital, don't apply medications. Third, ice should be not applied. Break blisters. Fourth, be careful in separating burned fingers or toes. Fifth, cover your eyes if they are involved. That's all.
Good day everyone, my name is Michelle Maybe Dangazo and I'm one of the reporters of Lesson 6, Landslide Before, During, and After. As you can see, as what in the slide shows, here is the definition of the landslides. Landslides. The flow of large quantities of rocks, dirt, or other debris down a slope causes landslide. They are triggered by quakes, volcanic eruptions, storms, fires, and land use changes made by humans. They could be big or small, leisurely or quick. Also, ang mga places na mga prone sa landslide damages are building on hilly areas or on the slopes. It increases the chance nga ma-affected sa mga landslides. And it says here, the mudflows and debris rivers are made up of water, soaked rivers of rocks, soil, and other debris. The soil turns into a burning river of mud or slurry when water quickly builds up into the ground. So, ga-build siya mga dagko nga debris which would eventually cause many damages, such as during heavy rains or quick snowmelt. They come at avalanche speed, flow quickly, and strike with little to no notice. Okay, kay fast-paced man ang mga landslides, daghan dili makabantay or ma-aware sa situation nga mahitabo nga there may be a landslide happening sa ilang palibot since unexpected ang iyang arrival at times. Problems on landslide are brought by land mismanagement, particularly in mountain canyon and coastal regions. Landslide mud flow and debris flow problems can be minimized by land use zoning, professional and inspections, and proper design. Okay, so many flood places are flood patterns that can be found in places diha gid kasagara prone ang mga landslide, especially sa coastal regions, and frequent pod ang pag-abot ani nga disasters to those places. And there's a way to prevent and protect landslides as here. Protective measures. Ways to be protected from the effects of landslide or debris flow. One is avoid building near steep slopes, close to mountain edges, near drainage ways or natural erosion valley. So we need to avoid that. 2. Appropriate professional experts' advice should be sought on corrective measures, since they know on how the land or the pattern of the land, they know the patterns. You actually need to take advices from them. 3. Ground assessment of your property should be conducted. 4. Avoid gas or water leaks and minimize home hazards. Have flexible pipe fittings installed since they are more resistant to breakage. Or only the gas company or professionals should install gas fittings. So, it says here nga professionals gyud ang better choice to leave the things or either magkuha kag mga professionals para either do these things like install sa imong mga pipe fittings since naay mga events nga naka-cause gyapon na siya landslides just because it was not properly placed or not properly installed by some professionals. And some professionals nowadays have ways to block many landslides. If makakita ka mag-travel ka, daghan na ka makita nga mga ways to prevent that. Okay, so before landslide, 1. The outside walls, walks, or stairs begin pulling away from the building. If nakay manotice nga different movements, that could be it. There is occurrences of changes in your landscape such as patterns of storm weather, drainage, and slopes, or especially the places where runoff water converses. Yes, water plays a huge part in landslides. Land movement, small slides, flows, or progressively leaning trees. 3. There are new cracks appearing in plastered, tile, brick, or foundations, so we need to take awareness on that. 4. There are unusual sounds such as crackling of the trees or knocking of the boulders together, which indicate moving debris. Even such a small sound, bisking gamay ra na siya nga changes of sound sa imong palibot, especially naka sa lugar nga prone sa mga landslides, you need to watch out for that because it could arrive at any moment. 5. It is for the first time that the doors or windows stick or jam. Yes, actually, mga misking indoors na siya, it could also heavily affect since that house or that indoor place like the door frame, it can be jammed since naarga po sa prone areas landslide. And 6, appearance of bulging ground at the base of a slope. 7, retaining walls, fences, utility poles, or trees tilt or move. So nature, you could observe the nature surrounding you since it could give a sign an island slide. 8, widening cracks are slowly developing and appearing on the ground or on paved areas such as streets or driveways. That is true. So mga travelers out there, beware. 9. Ground slopes downward in one direction and may begin shifting in the same place under your feet. So, ground foundations, mga dalan, it could change so fast that in downward direction and maybe begin shifting, so we need to be careful. 10. Indications of collapsed pavement, mud, fallen rocks, and possible debris flow, which can be seen when driving, or embankments along roadsides are particularly susceptible to landslide. So, kana mga dalan nga highway, but there's a slope of mountain like near the highway, like this is the highway in the mountains, that is really risky for landslides. And 11, as the landslide is getting nearer, there is noticeable faint rumbling sound that increases on volume. So, as the landslide goes on, obviously, madunggan gina nimo ang pagka-increase sa volume and even the debris falling, like managhan ang iyang mga falling debris, so it can cause big damage. Okay, so karon we now have prior knowledge about sa landslides. Let's proceed to the next reporter who will show you on what to do during a landslide or after a landslide. That is all. Thank you.
So I'm back again to discuss the guidelines when a landslide or debris flow occurs. During first is as quickly as possible, magpalayo o muhawas mga posibleng agian sa landslide na just like stay in the area and just watch the landslide happen. Just like in the picture nga, gitan-aw lang niya, wala siya gihimo. As soon as possible, move and give action. Second, if it is not possible to escape, curl into a tight ball and protect your head. Just like how the cat sleep. Just like in the second picture that's shown, you will be going to form like it. Like nest to chest and find things that will help you to protect your head to avoid accident. Third is find out if there are associated dangers. Know your surroundings to avoid additional accidents to you and to your family. Just like broken electric wiring, your gases, check if you turned it off, and others. After landslide. First is after the landslide, as soon as possible, you should move away from the slide area to avoid additional accidents. Second, if you are in good to help, you can look for injured or helping at risk person without entering the slide area and call for rescuers to help the injured people. Third, always listen to local radios and television stations in order to be updated on the latest emergencies infos or informations. Fourth is special assistance should be extended to neighbors who need help. Just like for some seniors, our lolo and lolas, infants, and those who have disabilities. The need are a special assistance or call for rescuers to help assist them. Fifth is always watch as floods may occur after a landslide or debris flow. We should stay awake, and that is because we don't know what will happen next, and it is for our safety also. Sixth is immediately report to the appropriate authorities broken utility lines. Just like for if you saw a broken electricity, report it to the authority in order to help and give action to to that incident. 7 is replant damage uh, ground as soon as possible, since erosion caused by loss of ground cover can lead to flash flooding and additional landslide in the near future. And lastly is we would seek advice from a geotechnical expert for evaluating landslide hazards or designing corrective techniques to reduce landslide risk. And that's all in my part. And the next topic will be discussed with my group mates.
So good day everyone. Again, I'm Andreanne Gorres, and today we will discuss the last topic in this module, which is the precautionary measures before, during, and after the natural disaster drought. But before that, let's first discuss the definition of drought. So drought is a natural disaster which is weather related. It is a normal recurrent feature of climate which occurs in virtually all climate zones. In the conceptual definition of drought, drought causes an extensive damage to crops, resulting the loss of products in the market. So, in Bisaya pa, drought daw kay muna siyang pagmala sa yuta. Like, manghupak bitaw, like, kanang magliki-liki na dayon ang yuta if wala na tubig. So, ang usahay, ang main cause sa drought is tungod sa kainit. Excuse me. Like kanang El Nino, for example, gakahitabo man na siya diri sa Philippines, and tungod sa kainit gakamala ang yuta sa atua. And nasa usahay ang kawalan sa tubig or usahay ra mag-ulan sa ana nga lugar, that's why mag-cause siya og drought. And drought is considered as a natural disaster since since nakadepend siya sa weather. Since if usahay ra mag-ulan, so kuan gyud nagi possibility nga magmala ang yuta. So ang drought sad kay dako sad na siya impact sa atua, since if madugayan na siya, if wala nagi supply sa tubig, kay dili makasupply sad og crops ang mga farmers, since ang crops need man na sila og tubig. So if walay crops, walay harvest, and if walay harvest, there is a possibility nga mutaas ang presyo sa mga vegetables or mga kanang fruits sa market. And then let's proceed to the 4 types of droughts. So, the first one is the meteorological drought. So, meteorological drought depends on the region, since the atmospheric conditions that result in the deficiencies of precipitation are highly variable from region to region. So, meteorological drought is based on daily rainfall information, temperature, humidity, wind velocity, and pressure. So, ang meteorological drought is magdepend lang ni siya sa kanang isa ka lugar. So, for example, kita kay ang Philippines kay considered man ta sa isa sa mga warm countries. So, nagiusahay nga hina ang kuan sa precipitation sa tuwa. So, usahay nga kanang usahay ra mag-ulan, and then mo din na siya ang cause nga kanang mamala din ang mamala dayon ang yuta sa atua, mo na siya ang tawag sa meteorological drought. So, the second one is the agricultural drought. Agricultural drought is where there is an adequate soil moisture to meet the needs of a particular crop at a particular time. This type of drought is connected to the agricultural impacts, which focuses on precipitation shortages, between actual and potential differences, deficits of soil water, reduced groundwater or reservoir levels, and etc. So, ang agricultural drought daw kay higher ni siya mahitabo if ang sa agricultural nga mga kuan nga mga sa agricultural nga type. Like for example, anang mumala ang yuta sa isa ka farm. So, if mumala na siya, since wala na may supply sa tubig, naay kuan nga naging possibility nga mamatay ang mga plants dadto. So there is a shortage na dayon sa market or nanay ka ng malessen na ang supply sa market. And then ang agricultural drought daw kay mahitabo na siya if kulang ang supply sa tubig. Like for example, usahay ra mag-ulan or kulang ang pag-supply sa kulang ang supply sa river kanang mala na ang river, wala nay spring, mga falls, wala nay makuha og tubig, and that's why mahitabo dayon ang agricultural drought since wala nay tubig nga mag-produce and wala nay tubig nga mag-support sa mga plants. So the third one is the hydrological drought. It refers to deficiencies in surface and subsurface water supplies. It is measured as stream flow, snowpack, and as lake reservoir and groundwater levels. So, ang hydrological drought daw kay muna siya ang kakulangan sa tubig sa ato ang natural resources like for example, mga falls, rivers, lakes, and other pa nga mga water supplies. So, haya ra na siya mahitabo ang hydrological drought if wala nagay tubig nga supply sa atoang water resources. The fourth and the last one is the socio-economic drought. So, it is the period when the health, well-being, and quality of life of the people are affected by the physical water shortages or when the drought starts to affect the supply and demand of an economic product. So, higher siya matawag nga socio-economic drought if na siya impact sa mga tao. Like for example, katong ganina nga tungod sa walay tubig, walay crops nga ma-produce and walay harvest. So, dako gyud siya impact sa tao since ang mga tao man kay kailangan matog gulay. So, nagi ka ng shortages gyud sa atoang vegetables since wala na may ma-harvest ang mga farmers. And nasay usahay nga tungod sa kakulangan sa tubig, ang mga tao kay mangayo na lang sa uban nga country or magpa-support na lang sa uban nga country since kanang mala namang gyud kayo ang ilahang water supply dadto. So ma-consider sa na siya nga socio-economic drought. And then there is also a physical water shortages like for example dili na lang maligo kay kulang man og tubig. So grabe dako gyapon kay na siya impact sa atoa. So that's all for the 4 types of drought, and now let's proceed to the precautionary measures to prevent drought, to prevent this natural disaster drought.
So, ways to save water is number one, leaky pipe should be repaired. So, mga galik na tubo, no, need na siya og repair para makasave of water. Number two, use the excess water from dishwashing or laundry to water plants, washing floors, toilet bowls, etc. So, kana imong mga hinugasan sa plato, no, pwede na nimo i-save siya para pwede pa nimo siya i-water sa plants, washing floors. So, kanang pong gikan sa imong panglaba, dili na nimo siya iabo. Kaya pwede pa na nimo ipang water sa plants. So, unsa pa na imong ipang buhaton. Number 3 is washers and leaking faucet should be replaced. Kanang mga ng sa lababo na faucet or anything na faucet na galit, no? Kailangan na siya pulihan. Number 4, take short showers only. So, if makaya na short ra pagligo para makasave og water, so why not short ang ligo para makasave og water, no? So, next. Daghan pa ni siya, pero dili lang ako siya ipang basa. So, napod ni ways to save water sa outdoors. Number 1 is use sprinklers with heavy spray. Ano ba itong anong sprinklers kay katong para sa dahon when kanang para water sa dahon. So, no heavy spray daw. Number 2, check your pump periodically. Number 3, adhere to water conservation and regulations when experiencing a drought. Number 4, water your lawns in short sessions. Number 5, position your sprinklers properly. Number 6, plant grass that does not need much water to survive. So now mag-plant daw og kanang grass na di kay niya need of water para makasurvive. So, how to investigate for drought vulnerability. Number 1, identify relevant drought impacts and trends over time. So, a unique set of impacts is produced by each drought, depending not only on the thought's severity, duration, and spatial extent, but also on every changing social condition. So, this is these are frequently signs of other underlying issues that this impact cause have caused. So, investigating the effects of drought should be a good place to start in order to comprehend its vulnerability. Next, to rank significant drought impact. The most significant impact should be addressed first in order to help targets limited resources and hopefully have a large effect in reducing drought impacts and vulnerabilities. So, no, drought can have a wide range of immediate, a long-term, and a long-term effects. In terms of worth and interest, some of them might be more significant than others. Next is number 3, investigate the underlying cost of drought impacts. It is very important to understand why the impacts occur in order to know what causes of the problems. Hence, it can easily be addressed. So that's all. Thank you.